My sister's manicured fingers wrapped around that silver cake knife like a weapon forged from years of buried resentment. The blade caught the afternoon light filtering through the baby shower decorations, pink balloons swaying ominously overhead like witnesses to what was about to unfold. "This is my day," she screamed, her voice cracking with the desperation of someone whose entire world was crumbling in real time. The knife trembled in her grasp as mascara carved black rivers down her cheeks. "Mine! You've stolen everything!" From me, my spotlight, my moment, my life. I stood frozen, one hand instinctively protecting my swollen belly where my twins, kicked restlessly, as if sensing the danger surrounding them. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, finally getting my revenge after years of living in Melissa's shadow, and she was threatening to destroy it all with one desperate slash of surgical steel. But let me take you back to where this psychological warfare truly began. 9 months earlier, the graduation ceremony at Buffalo University should have been my moment of triumph. 4 years of sacrifice, studying while Melissa partied, working 3 jobs while she lived off mom's guilt money. As I walked across that stage, my diploma within reach, I heard it. That all too familiar banshee wail that had haunted every important moment of my life. "Help! Someone help!" Melissa's voice cut through the applause like a rusty blade through silk. She was on the ground, clutching her chest with theatrical precision, hyperventilating with the practiced rhythm of someone who'd perfected this performance over decades. The entire ceremony ground to a halt. Paramedics rushed in. Cameras pivoted away from graduating students toward my sister's latest medical emergency. I stood there in my cap and gown, diploma forgotten, watching the same sick pattern play out again. At 12, she'd fainted during my first piano recital. Right during my solo, prom night when they announced my name as queen, she'd clutched her chest claiming heart palpitations. Every birthday, every achievement, every moment that should have been mine became about her imaginary medical crises. 23 years of this psychological terrorism, and I'd finally reached my breaking point, the invitation to her baby shower. Arrived 3 weeks later, decorated with pastel elephants and promises of celebrating new life. I held it in trembling hands while Daniel rubbed my shoulders, completely unaware of the dark plan already forming in my mind. "We should go," he said gently. "She's your sister. Family is important. Family." The word tasted bitter on my tongue. What family abandons you at your own graduation for someone's fake heart attack? That night, I pressed myself against Daniel in our bed, my lips finding his ear. "Let's try for a baby," I whispered, my voice honey-sweet with hidden venom. He pulled back, confused. "I thought we were waiting until after your promotion." "I can't wait anymore," I lied smoothly, my hand tracing patterns on his chest. "I need this. I need us to have everything we've dreamed of." What I didn't tell him was that I'd already calculated the timeline with surgical precision. 3 months until her shower, 3 fertility cycles to get pregnant. The math was beautiful in its simplicity and devastating in its purpose. Ace Teat 2, the perfect trap. The first pregnancy test mocked me with its single line, negative. I stared at it in our bathroom mirror, seeing not just a failed attempt, but a ticking clock. Time was running out for my revenge to align perfectly. Month 2 brought another negative. I was lying in the dark ultrasound room, gel cold on my belly, when destiny finally smiled upon me. "Congratulations," the technician said, moving the wand with practiced precision. "It's twins," I laughed, actually laughed out loud. The technician looked concerned, but she couldn't possibly understand the exquisite irony. Not only was I pregnant, I was carrying twins. Double the attention, double the drama, double the devastation for Melissa's special day. The following months were a masterclass in psychological manipulation. I became Melissa's biggest cheerleader, her most enthusiastic supporter. Every Instagram post about her pregnancy got my enthusiastic comments. Every baby shower detail received my eager input. "Oh my God, girl," I'd gush over coffee dates. "You absolutely need a countdown timer. I'll design it myself." I posted daily updates. 5 months until my beautiful sister becomes a mom. The irony burned sweet on my tongue, knowing I was literally counting down to her destruction. But then she posted the name, Delphine Aurora. My heart stopped. Those were the names I'd written in my diary at 15, names I'd whispered to myself. During lonely nights dreaming of my future children, names I'd never shared with anyone. That's when I knew she'd been violating my privacy for years, reading my most intimate thoughts, stealing even my dreams for her own use. The violation felt like ice in my veins, but it also crystallized my resolve. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. The morning of her baby shower, I helped curl her hair, each strand wrapping around the iron like my plans wrapping around her throat. She was emotional, tears threatening her makeup, completely unaware that her sister was preparing to detonate her entire world. "You know what Mom said?" I whispered, applying her lipstick with artistic precision. "She thinks it's better that I'm the one having babies instead of you. Better photos," she said. "You know how important appearances are to her." Melissa's face flickered with hurt, but she forced a smile. "This is my day, Sarah. No interruptions this time." "Absolutely," I agreed, my voice dripping with false sincerity. "Your day, your moment, your last moment in the spotlight. The party was perfect. Melissa had outdone herself with 3-tier cakes, balloon arches, and enough pink decorations to blind someone. She insisted on the gender reveal performance, even though everyone already knew from her social media posts. Classic Melissa, never satisfied with one moment of attention when she could stretch it into an entire production. Wore a loose dress, but my bump was visible to anyone who looked carefully. Nobody was looking at me yet, though. That would change soon enough. "Look at Sarah," Melissa whispered to Mom, her voice carrying just enough malice to curl my toes. "She's gotten absolutely huge. If I didn't know better, I'd think she was the pregnant one." Mom's laugh felt like fingernails on glass. "Well, you've always been the thin one, honey. Good thing, too, for the photos." The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Pink confetti exploded everywhere as Melissa screamed her joy to the assembled crowd. Cameras flashed, everyone cheered. The performance was flawless. That's when my morning sickness hit with perfect, devastating timing. I ran to the bathroom, hand clamped over my mouth, my heart hammering with anticipation rather than nausea. When I emerged, every eye in the room focused on me with concern that was about to transform into something far more powerful. "Sorry," I gasped, one hand fluttering to my belly with practiced vulnerability. "It's just the twins. 6 weeks with twins, and I can't keep anything down." The silence was so complete, I could hear the air conditioning cycling on. Then the explosion began. "Twins!" Aunt Martha shrieked, her voice reaching frequencies that probably shattered wine glasses 3 counties over. The crowd surged toward me like a tide abandoning a sinking ship. Hands reached for my belly. Questions bombarded me from every direction. When did I find out? Do twins run in the family? Are they identical? Boy or girl, or both? I watched Melissa's face cycle through. Every stage of grief and fast forward. Confusion melted into realization. Realization curdled into fury. Fury crystallized into something far more dangerous. Pure, undiluted rage. Her chest began heaving. Her face shifted from pink to red to purple. I braced myself for the performance of her lifetime. I can't breathe," she gasped, clutching her chest with one hand while the other reached desperately for attention that was no longer hers. "Someone help me! I'm having a panic attack!" But everyone was around me now. Even Ryan, her own husband, was asking me about twin strollers and prenatal vitamins. "Hello!" she screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. "I'm having a panic attack! This is my party!" Mom glanced over with visible annoyance. "Melissa, honey, not now. Sarah's having twins on her first pregnancy. This is incredible." That's when my sister's mind finally snapped. She grabbed the cake knife with trembling hands, and for one crystalline moment, I thought this was how my story would end. Death by baby shower, murdered by my own sister's jealousy made manifest. "This is my day," she screamed, mascara streaming down her face like war paint. "Mine! I've been trying for 3 years. 3 years of shots and tests and disappointment, and you just waltz in here and steal everything." Ryan grabbed her wrist, twisting the knife away while she stood frozen, her whole body convulsing with rage and grief. The blade clattered to the floor, sliding under the dessert table like evidence of attempted murder. Melissa's legs gave out completely. She collapsed to her knees, wailing so loudly the neighbors probably called the police. Her perfectly styled hair fell around her face as she pounded her fists on the floor, screaming that I'd ruined everything, that I always ruined everything, that this was supposed to be her special day. At least 20 phones captured every second of her meltdown. The footage would be viral within hours, but in that moment, all I could think about was how beautiful she looked in her destruction, finally showing the world who she really was beneath the perfect makeup and practiced smiles. Mom rushed over, wrapping Melissa in her arms while completely ignoring me standing there in shock with my hands protecting my babies. The symbolism was perfect. Even in my moment of triumph, I was still invisible to the woman who gave me life. "I was your mother," someone muttered behind me. I'd be ashamed. That's when Mom snapped. She stormed over and slapped me across the face so hard the sound echoed through the suddenly silent room like a gunshot. The sting spread across my cheek like fire. "You selfish bitch," she screamed, her voice carrying over Melissa's continued, wailing. "You couldn't let her have one day without making it about you? One single day." The room went dead silent except for Melissa's sobbing. Several people gasped at what they'd just witnessed, and Daniel immediately stepped between Mom and me, his face white with rage. "Back the hell off," he snarled, "or I'm calling the cops myself." Grace appeared beside me like an avenging angel. "If anyone else lays a hand on her, I'm calling 911, she announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. That's when Melissa bent over and vomited all over the floor, yellow bile splashing onto her expensive maternity dress and designer shoes. Ryan jumped up, panic in his voice, as he announced they needed to get to the hospital immediately. "She's having contractions from the stress," he shouted, helping her stand on shaking legs. Mom immediately pointed at me with a trembling finger. "If she loses that baby, it's your fault," she screamed, her voice carrying across the entire backyard. As Ryan guided Melissa toward their car, she turned back one last time, her face a mask of pure hatred. "If I lose my baby," she screamed, "I'll make sure you lose yours too." The threat was captured on at least 10 different phones. Daniel immediately grabbed my hand. "We're filing a police report," he said grimly. "Right now." Act 4. The aftermath, we sat in Daniel's car in the hospital parking lot while he called 911, reporting both the assault and the threat against our unborn children. My cheek throbbed where Mom had hit me, and I could feel the twins moving frantically, responding to my elevated stress levels. 2 police officers arrived within 20 minutes, taking our statements while reviewing the footage Grace and 3 other guests had saved on their phones. They photographed my red cheek and advised us to file for a restraining order first thing Monday morning. 3 hours later, we were home. Daniel made chamomile tea while I sat on our couch, trying to process everything that had happened. He settled beside me, his voice gentle but worried. "I'm scared of what she might do next," he admitted. "Maybe we should stay with my parents for a few days." "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I'm not letting her drive me out of my own home. Not after everything she's done over the years." My phone exploded with notifications as the videos went viral across TikTok and Instagram. Hashtags like "Launch Baby Shower Meltdown" and "Psycho Sister" trended within hours. Comments poured in calling Melissa crazy and Mom abusive, though others criticized me for announcing my pregnancy at her party. The next morning brought new torment. Our doorbell rang at 7 a.m. like someone was holding it down. Daniel peered through the peephole and cursed under his breath. "It's your mother." Carol stood outside, her face red and puffy from crying, pressing the doorbell repeatedly before switching to pounding on the door with her fists. Daniel opened it just a crack with the chain still engaged. "Sarah!" she screamed, trying to push her fingers through the gap. "You get out here right now and take those videos down. You've ruined Melissa's life. You've destroyed our entire family." Her voice grew louder and more unhinged until she was basically shrieking about how I was a monster who'd always been jealous of my sister. Neighbors began emerging from their apartments, Mrs. Chen from next door recording everything on her phone while standing in her bathrobe. The attention only made Carol scream louder, kicking our door while yelling about how I was evil and had always wanted to destroy Melissa's happiness. "I'm calling the police," Daniel warned through the chain. She finally backed away but continued screaming threats from the hallway for another 20 minutes before storming off. An hour later, Nathan called. His voice sounded completely exhausted. "Melissa's still in the hospital," he said wearily. "Her blood pressure is dangerously high. The doctors are worried about the baby. Look, I'm begging you. Can we have a family meeting? Work this out before it gets worse?" I could hear the desperation in his voice, but I wasn't ready to be ambushed again. "Only if it's somewhere public," I said. "And Daniel comes with me." "Fine. The Italian place downtown. 2 days from now." Those 48 hours crawled by with my anxiety climbing higher by the hour. I couldn't stop worrying that all this stress was hurting my babies. I made an emergency appointment with my OB/GYN. The waiting room was packed, and I noticed several women staring at me. One whispered to her friend while pointing at me with her phone out. They'd definitely seen the viral videos that were still spreading everywhere. Dr. Torres called me back for a full ultrasound examination. She moved the wand around my belly for what felt like forever, checking both babies' heartbeats and development. "The twins are fine," she finally announced. "But this level of stress is dangerous for all 3 of you. I'm prescribing something mild for anxiety, and you need to avoid any more confrontations." The restaurant meeting felt like walking into a tribunal. Carol, Nathan, Melissa, and Ryan were already seated at a corner table when Daniel and I arrived. Melissa looked pale with dark circles under her eyes, but she'd clearly spent time on her makeup. The moment we sat down, Carol launched into her demands. "You need to apologize," she said firmly. "Admit you planned this whole thing to hurt Melissa. Take responsibility for what you've done to this family." Melissa sat there playing, the victim wiping away tears that might have been real or might have been performance art. With her, it was impossible to tell. "You've always been jealous of me," she said, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "You can't stand that I'm prettier, that Mom loves me more, that everyone always chooses me over you." Ryan flinched at that statement, and I filed his reaction. Away for later consideration, Nathan tried to play peacemaker. "Let's just find a way to move forward," he pleaded. "We're family. We can work through this." But Carol kept interrupting, raising her voice until other restaurant patrons began staring at our table. That's when Melissa reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope, sliding it across the table with a nasty smirk. "I'm suing you for intentional infliction of emotional distress and endangering my pregnancy," she announced triumphantly. "My lawyer says we have a very strong case." Daniel immediately called his cousin Emma, who was a family attorney. Melissa's face fell when she heard him explaining our situation to a real lawyer. We left the restaurant with Carol still screaming threats behind us, but I felt lighter than I had in weeks. For the first time, we had professional legal help. That evening, Grace showed up with wine for Daniel and chocolate ice cream for me. She'd been following everything online and wanted to check on us. As we sat on our couch, she pulled out her phone with a mysterious smile. "I've been keeping something," she said, scrolling through a hidden folder. Screenshots and photos going back years, documenting Melissa's attention-seeking behavior. She showed me evidence I'd completely forgotten about. Photos from my high school graduation where Melissa had fainted in the background. Screenshots from my college acceptance party where she'd claimed chest pains. Posts from my engagement dinner where she'd had a sudden allergic reaction to nothing identifiable. "I've been quietly collecting proof of this pattern," Grace explained. "I always knew someday you'd need it." A week later, Emma came over to review Melissa's lawsuit. She read through the papers and actually started laughing. "This is completely frivolous," she said, shaking her head. "It'll get thrown out immediately. But we should countersue for assault. Your mother hitting you was recorded on multiple phones. We can also sue for the threats against your babies." Having real legal support finally helped me sleep through the night. We went to the courthouse the following week to file for restraining orders against both Carol and Melissa. The judge reviewed our evidence, including witness statements about Carol's screaming fit at our apartment, and granted temporary orders prohibiting them from coming within 500 feet of us. Carol violated the restraining order within 48 hours. She showed up at Daniel's office building, marching past security and screaming at the receptionist to let her see him. Security detained her while she fought and yelled about me destroying her family. The police arrested her in handcuffs while Daniel's coworkers watched from the windows. His boss suggested he work from home until the situation was resolved, so Daniel set up an office in our spare bedroom. But the psychological warfare was far from over. Ace till 6. Escalation and I woke up at 3 a.m. a few nights later to strange noises outside our bedroom window. My heart raced as I crept to peek through the blinds. Melissa's car was parked across the street, just beyond the 500-foot limit of the restraining order. She sat in the driver's seat, staring directly at our apartment building. I watched her for 20 minutes. She never moved, never looked away from our windows. She stayed there for 3 hours, just watching our home in the darkness like some kind of deranged sentinel. Daniel installed security cameras the next morning, covering every angle of our building. For 2 weeks, Melissa parked just outside the camera range every single night, maintaining her vigil of hatred. Nathan showed up looking like he hadn't slept in days, his shirt wrinkled and his eyes bloodshot. "Carol's been staying at our place," he said, slumping onto our couch. "She's driving Ryan crazy with constant rants about you. He's thinking about divorce. Melissa's obsession with destroying you is making her physically sick during the pregnancy." 3 days later, I went in for my 20-week anatomy scan. The ultrasound technician was unusually quiet, moving the wand around my belly without commentary. Dr. Torres came in and took over, measuring each twin repeatedly. "One twin is smaller than the other," she explained, her face serious. "We need closer monitoring every week from now on. The stress is literally affecting your baby's growth." I couldn't stop the tears. Daniel held me in that cold, dark room while I sobbed, gel still sticky on my belly. That night, Grace called in a panic. "Someone posted your medical information all over the Buffalo Mom Facebook groups," she said frantically. "Your doctor's name, the clinic address, even your appointment times for next month. There are screenshots of your medical chart showing you're having twins and your due date." Daniel called hospital security while I contacted Emma. She explained this was a serious federal crime. Someone with access to the hospital system had illegally obtained my records. The investigation revealed Nathan's wife, Linda, had been accessing my files from her position in the billing department. She'd looked at my records 17 times in the past month, feeding information to Melissa. Linda was escorted out by security and faced immediate termination. Nathan showed up that evening, completely devastated by his wife's betrayal. "I had no idea she was helping them," he said, his voice broken. "I feel like I don't even know who I married." The next day brought a text from Ryan that made my hands shake. "I found Melissa's notebook. She's been planning to destroy you since high school. Pages and pages of schemes. I'm scared for our baby. I'm meeting with a custody lawyer tomorrow. 3 weeks after the baby shower, Melissa posted a completely fabricated story on Facebook, claiming I'd been stalking her for months. She included doctored photos making it look like I was following her, plus fake text messages showing me threatening her and her baby. The post was shared hundreds of times within hours. Strangers began sending death threats through Facebook and Instagram. Someone posted our home address in the comments, writing that I deserved whatever happened to me. Daniel contacted the FBI about the cyber stalking campaign. They took it seriously, opening an investigation into the harassment. Meanwhile, my blood pressure kept climbing at every doctor visit. Dr. Torres put me on modified bed rest, restricting me to home except for medical appointments. The size difference between the twins was getting worse, and she was worried about premature delivery. Being trapped at home while Melissa spread lies about me online felt like psychological imprisonment. 2 days later, police showed up with news about Linda. She was being arrested for HIPAA violations and faced up to 10 years in federal prison. The investigation revealed she'd been feeding Melissa copies of my ultrasounds, blood work results, and weight measurements from each appointment. Nathan filed for divorce that same day, disgusted by what his wife had done to our family. The entire family structure was collapsing, with everyone choosing sides and pointing fingers. A month after the baby shower, a process server delivered Melissa's civil lawsuit. She was suing both Daniel and me for alienation of affection and conspiracy to ruin her reputation, demanding $500,000 in damages. We were already spending thousands on lawyers for the criminal cases and restraining orders. Now we needed a civil attorney too, and the bills were mounting faster than we could pay them. Emma filed countersuits for defamation, emotional distress, and harassment. She pressed additional criminal charges against Carol for the assault. She warned this could take months or years to resolve, but we had to fight back. 2 weeks later, I woke at 3 a.m. with sharp pains shooting through my belly. Daniel rushed me to the hospital while I gripped the door handle, trying to breathe through contractions. Dr. Torres gave me shots to stop premature labor, explaining the twins wouldn't survive if born at 24 weeks. I stayed hospitalized for 3 days while the contractions gradually stopped. While I was still hooked up to monitors, Melissa posted on Facebook about karma catching up to me. Ryan showed up the second day with flowers hidden under his jacket. I'm documenting everything for our divorce, he told me quietly. Melissa's been prescribed psychiatric medication, but she refuses to take it. She's completely detached from reality. 6 weeks after the baby shower, Grace organized what she called a support rally at our house. Cars filled our street as people I hadn't seen since college showed up with casseroles and baby gifts. My coworkers brought diapers, and neighbors set up tables in our backyard. We were all enjoying the gathering when screaming erupted from the front yard. Melissa stood on our lawn, 8 months pregnant, yelling that I was turning everyone against her. Grace tried to guide her back to her car, but Melissa pushed her away violently. That's when liquid splashed onto the grass, and Melissa grabbed her belly, screaming. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later, while she accused me of causing her premature labor through stress. The next morning, Daniel and I sat in stunned silence while our phones buzzed with updates. Melissa had delivered a healthy baby girl at the hospital. Carol called that afternoon, her voice pure poison. She named the baby Delphina Aurora Sarah, adding your name just to spite you. Ryan texted that he was refusing to sign the birth certificate, until Melissa agreed to psychiatric counseling. 2 months after the original baby shower, Grace threw me a replacement celebration at her house. I was opening presents when a process server walked up and handed me papers. Melissa was seeking a restraining order against me, claiming I had caused her premature labor. The judge assigned to our case attended Carol's church, creating a clear conflict of interest. Despite all our evidence and Emma's arguments, he granted Melissa's restraining order. Emma immediately filed for recusal and started the appeals process, but it would take weeks to resolve. That night, I lay in bed feeling the twins kick and roll inside me while Daniel held me as I cried about what kind of world we were bringing our babies into. 10 weeks passed with lawyers filing papers while I grew bigger every day. Grace showed up one morning carrying a dusty box from her garage. Childhood photos Carol had thrown out years ago. I spread them across our coffee table while she made tea. There was Melissa and me at ages 5 and 6, arms around each other. At the beach, both missing front teeth and grinning. Another showed us in matching Halloween costumes. Photo after photo of 2 little girls who had actually loved each other once. My hands shook as I picked up one from my 8th birthday, where Melissa was helping me blow out candles. Her face lit up with genuine happiness for me. This wasn't always about jealousy, Grace said softly, rubbing my back as I cried. This is mental illness destroying what used to be real love. Ryan called that afternoon with news that made my blood run cold. He'd filed for emergency custody after finding a notebook where Melissa had written "Destroy Sarah" over and over. For 20 pages. She'd also been refusing psychiatric medication and missing therapy appointments. The judge granted emergency custody immediately. When the custody officer arrived to serve papers, Melissa grabbed baby Delphine and ran to her car while Carol blocked the officer's path. They disappeared before anyone could stop them. Ryan was at the police station within an hour, filing a missing person report. The Amber Alert went out that evening with Delphine's photo and descriptions of both women. Around midnight, police found them at a motel 2 towns over after someone recognized them from the alert. Both women were arrested for custodial interference, while baby Delphine was returned safely to Ryan. Emma called us to her office 3 days later to discuss the mounting charges: assault, threats, harassment, and now kidnapping. The prosecutor was pushing for serious jail time given the escalation pattern. "Are you prepared to testify and potentially send your mother and sister to prison?" Emma asked directly. The room spun as the weight of that question hit me. Daniel grabbed my hand as I nodded, yes. Nathan showed up looking like he'd aged 10 years. His divorce from Linda was final, and he'd started therapy twice a week. "I should have protected you better," he said, crying at our kitchen table. "I always knew the favoritism was wrong, but I chose the easy path of avoiding conflict. I failed you for 30 years. 3 months after the baby shower, I was sitting in a deposition room answering questions when pain shot through my abdomen. Contractions were coming fast and hard. At the hospital, Dr. Torres worked quickly to stop premature labor with IV medication, explaining that stress was triggering real labor at only 30 weeks. She managed to stop the contractions, but warned they could start again any moment. Meanwhile, Emma's appeal succeeded. A new judge reviewed everything and immediately threw out Melissa's restraining order, issuing bench warrants for both women for violating the original protection order. Dr. Torres insisted on complete hospital bed rest for the remainder of my pregnancy. I spent my days in that sterile room, watching the twins' heartbeats on monitors while following Melissa's social media through a fake account. She seemed completely detached from reality, posting about being a victim of persecution and living in a fantasy where she'd done nothing wrong. Daniel brought news that complicated everything. His company was transferring him to Seattle with a big promotion and full relocation assistance. After everything that happened, they wanted him in a different office. We talked about leaving Buffalo behind and starting fresh 3,000 miles from my family. Part of me felt relief at the thought of escape. 2 days later, Melissa showed up at the hospital claiming she wanted to apologize. Security stopped her at the elevator, but she managed to scream loud enough for the entire floor to hear that she hoped my babies would die just like our relationship had. 3 nurses witnessed the threat, and security had to physically remove her. Emma added witness intimidation to the growing list of charges. 14 weeks after the baby shower, Ryan appeared at my hospital window with baby Delphine wrapped in a pink blanket. He held her up to the glass so I could see her tiny, perfect face, mouthing that his divorce papers were signed and he was moving to Rochester to raise her away from all this chaos. I pressed my hand against the window, watching them leave, this innocent baby who had no idea what her mother had done. The district attorney took over our case completely, combining everything into major criminal charges. We weren't dealing with lawsuits anymore, but actual felony, charges that could mean serious prison time. The arraignment was set for Tuesday morning. I watched news coverage from my hospital bed as Mom stood in an orange jumpsuit next to Melissa while the judge read charges. Then Mom grabbed her chest and collapsed right there in the courtroom. Bailiffs started CPR while Melissa screamed at cameras that I was killing our mother. They rushed Mom out on a stretcher after a massive heart attack. Despite everything she'd done, I felt pain watching them work on her. Nathan showed up looking exhausted from running between floors. Mom was stable but critical, 2 floors below me in the cardiac unit. He said she kept asking for me, claiming she'd had some kind of revelation. Against Daniel's protests, I asked to see her with security guards present. They wheeled me down in a wheelchair with 2 guards beside us. Mom looked so small in that hospital bed, gray-faced and aged 10 years. She reached for my hand with shaky fingers and started crying. "I was living through Melissa because I was jealous that you made something of yourself without my help," she admitted. "I've been punishing you for being everything I never had the courage to be." The words didn't fix anything, but hearing her actually admit it was something I never thought would happen. 2 weeks later, at 32 weeks pregnant, I watched local news run our family story for the 100th time. The headline, "Buffalo Family Feud Turns Criminal," scrolled while they showed photos from Melissa's Instagram. I rubbed my huge belly, realizing my twins would someday Google their family and find all this chaos online forever. The thought was more nauseating than any morning sickness. The news mentioned leaked documents from Melissa's psychiatric evaluation showing diagnoses of narcissistic personality disorder and postpartum psychosis. Her lawyer was changing their defense to claim insanity. Ryan was using the diagnosis to get permanent custody of Delphine. Grace showed up the next day with balloons and a small cake for a do-over baby shower right in my hospital room. Just close friends came, maybe 10 people total, and we sat around eating cake and opening presents without any drama. Daniel never left my side, sleeping in that uncomfortable chair every night. I'd wake at 3 a.m. to hear him whispering to my belly about parks in Seattle and good schools near our new apartment. 2 weeks later, chaos erupted when Melissa escaped from her psychiatric hold. She'd convinced an orderly she was having a medical emergency and slipped out during shift change. Security footage showed her stealing a kitchen knife from the hospital cafeteria before heading to the maternity ward elevator, screaming my name and waving the blade. 3 security guards tackled her before she could reach the locked doors, but not before terrifying new mothers and visitors. The whole floor went on lockdown for 2 hours. This time, the judge ordered her held without bail. The prosecutor fast-tracked the trial because of the knife incident and my high-risk pregnancy. Emma came to my room with boxes of evidence, prepping me for testimony. She showed me pictures they'd collected, videos from the baby shower, witness statements, screenshots of Melissa's threatening social media posts. The prep took 3 hours, with Emma asking about every time Melissa had ruined my important moments going back to childhood. Ryan showed up carrying Delphine in a tiny pink dress, asking if Daniel and I would be her godparents if anything happened. To him, he wanted his daughter to know her cousins and have family who actually cared about her. Daniel and I both said yes, even though my chest felt tight thinking about how broken everything had become. 3 days later, Dr. Torres circled a date on my wall calendar. 34 weeks was as far as she was comfortable letting me go with all the stress. The C-section was scheduled for next Thursday. My babies would arrive right in the middle of Melissa's trial. The morning of my testimony, Emma set up video equipment in my hospital room while nurses monitored my blood pressure every 10 minutes. The judge's face appeared on the laptop screen first, then the jury box, and finally the defense table where Melissa sat in an orange jumpsuit, staring straight ahead with vacant eyes. Emma had warned me not to look at her, but I couldn't help myself. I saw her lips moving like she was talking to someone invisible, her hands twitching in restraints I hadn't noticed before. "Please state your name for the record." The prosecutor's voice crackled through the speakers. "Sarah Michelle Chen," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "And you're testifying today from Buffalo General Hospital. Is that correct?" "Yes. I'm on bed rest due to complications from stress during my high-risk twin pregnancy." The prosecutor asked me to describe the baby shower incident in detail. I told them everything, from the cake knife pressed against my belly to Melissa's. Vomiting to her, screaming about it being her day. My voice never wavered as I recounted each moment of her psychological breakdown. Then he asked about our childhood, and I methodically listed every recital, graduation, birthday, and achievement she'd sabotaged with fake medical emergencies or dramatic scenes. "At your piano recital when you were 12, what happened?" Melissa fainted in the front row during my solo performance. The paramedics had to carry her out while I continued playing to an empty auditorium. "And at your high school prom, she claimed to be having heart palpitations just as they announced me as prom queen. The ambulance arrived as they were placing the crown on my head. Several jury members were writing notes furiously, while one woman in the front row covered her mouth in shock. When they asked about the pregnancy announcement, Melissa suddenly looked up and our eyes met through the screen. For just a second, I saw a flicker of my real sister beneath the medication-dulled stare. Pain, regret, and something that might have been love. Then she went back to muttering to her invisible companion. "Did you plan to announce your pregnancy at your sister's baby shower?" the prosecutor asked. I took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "Yes," I said clearly. I calculated my fertility cycles specifically so I would be pregnant during her party. I wanted to hurt her the way she'd hurt me for 23 years. The courtroom fell silent. Even through the video feed, I could feel the weight of that admission. "I'm not proud of what I did," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "But I'm also not sorry. She'd been stealing my moments since we were children. It was time for her to know how it felt." The defense attorney objected, claiming I was admitting to intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judge overruled. "Mrs. Chen, did you at any point fear for your physical safety during the baby shower?" "Yes. When my sister picked up that cake knife and pointed it at my pregnant belly, I genuinely believed she might stab me and kill my unborn children." Melissa suddenly stood up in court, yelling that I doctored the footage and paid people to lie about her. The judge ordered her to sit down, but she kept screaming that I'd ruined her life until bailiffs physically removed her from the courtroom. Through the video feed, I watched chaos erupt as she fought the officers, screaming threats about what she'd do to me and my babies when she got out. The judge called a recess. Nathan visited that evening with converted VHS tapes on his laptop. We watched videos from when Melissa and I were little, playing dress-up, having tea parties in the backyard. One showed her teaching me to ride a bike, running beside me and cheering when I finally found my balance. Daniel held me while I cried, watching the sister I'd lost somewhere along the way to jealousy and mental illness. Mom took the stand 2 days later. Emma texted me updates since I couldn't watch. She admitted to hitting me at the shower and told the court she'd always favored Melissa because she was prettier and more outgoing. When they showed her the timeline of every incident mapped out on a board, even she had to admit it looked deliberate. Did you notice a pattern in your daughter Melissa's behavior at Sarah's important events? The prosecutor asked. I thought Sarah was being dramatic about it, Mom replied. But seeing it all laid out like this, there were so many times. Mom begged the judge to send Melissa to treatment instead of prison, saying she was sick, not evil. But the prosecutor pointed out that understanding right from wrong meant she was responsible for her choices. The next morning, they played the baby shower videos for the jury. Emma said several people looked physically ill watching Melissa's breakdown and the knife threat. When they reached the part where she screamed about it being her day, Melissa stood up in court again, shouting that I'd edited the footage to make her look crazy. "Your Honor!" she shrieked. "She's been planning this for years. She got pregnant just to destroy me. She's the monster, not me." The judge ordered her removed again as she continued screaming threats until 4 bailiffs dragged her out. Grace stopped by that afternoon with tiny outfits and a photo album she'd been creating. She'd asked everyone we knew to write messages for the twins and collected them with pictures of Daniel and me throughout my pregnancy. Reading through the well wishes from friends, co-workers, and nurses made me realize how much love these babies had waiting for them despite all the chaos. Ryan testified the following day, bringing a cardboard box to the witness stand labeled Operation Destroy Sarah, a notebook they'd found in Melissa's closet with entries dating back to high school. He read pages aloud describing detailed plans to ruin my prom, college acceptance, celebration, engagement party, and dozens of other events. Some entries had drawings of me crying or lists of ways to upstage me. "Did you recognize your wife's handwriting in these entries?" the prosecutor asked. "Unfortunately, yes," Ryan replied, his voice breaking. "Some of these plans go back 15 years. She'd been documenting ways to hurt Sarah since they were teenagers. Even Mom looked shocked when they displayed close-ups of the pages on courtroom screens. During his testimony about finding the notebook, Melissa started screaming from her seat that the baby wasn't his, and she'd kill everyone who betrayed her. Me, the babies, Ryan, and anyone who took my side. The judge immediately ordered another psychiatric evaluation and had her held at the state mental facility. 2 weeks later, the judge declared Melissa incompetent to stand trial due to her deteriorating mental state. She was committed to the state hospital for treatment that could take years. Carol's case proceeded separately since she was mentally competent. Just cruel. She was convicted of assault and harassment, but only received 2 years probation and mandatory therapy. The morning of my scheduled C-section arrived with Seattle rain pattering against the hospital windows. Daniel suited up in scrubs and held my hand behind the surgical curtain while they prepared to cut me open. At 7:23 a.m., our son was born, 3 pounds and crying with healthy lungs. At 7:24 a.m., our daughter followed, smaller but fighting just as hard. Daniel cried when he held them for the first time. These tiny, perfect babies we'd created together in the midst of chaos. Through the recovery room window, I saw Nathan standing in the hallway with tears streaming down his face. Finally getting to be a grandfather to babies who might actually know him? The twins went straight to NICU where they'd need help breathing and eating for several weeks. But they were alive. They were safe. They were ours. Our house in Seattle had big windows and a quiet street where normal families lived. People who settled disputes with conversations instead of cake knives. The twins' nursery was painted soft yellow with clouds on the ceiling, exactly as Grace had designed it. Melissa remained institutionalized, her delusions about stealing my babies growing worse despite medication. Ryan had moved to Portland with Delphine and his new girlfriend, close enough for cousin playdates but far from Buffalo's poison. I went back to work at a marketing firm downtown, pumping milk in bathroom stalls and checking my phone for pictures Daniel sent of the babies. During lunch breaks, I sat in cafes listening to coworkers complain about traffic and weekend plans, normal problems from normal people who'd never heard of viral baby shower meltdowns. My therapist's office had beige walls and a white noise machine. I sat on her couch for months, unpacking the ugly truth that I'd gotten pregnant for revenge, not love. "How does that make you feel now?" she asked during one session. "Empty," I admitted. Guilty and somehow still angry, but also grateful, because even though I did it for the wrong reasons, I got the right result. I got my children. I got my freedom from her. Nathan called on the twins' first birthday, asking if he could visit. Daniel said yes before I could object. He showed up with a wrapped box, looking older than I remembered. Inside was a quilt made from fabric scraps in blues and greens, with a small envelope in Carol's handwriting tucked in the corner. I didn't open the letter. Not then. Maybe not ever. Nathan played with the twins for an hour, helping them blow out their birthday candles, then left without asking for anything more. The quilt went in their closet, not the trash, but not displayed either. Grace moved to Seattle 2 months later, getting an apartment 3 blocks away. She brought takeout every evening and held the babies while Daniel and I ate with both hands for once. 8 months in our new city felt like the right time for something we should have done differently the first time. Daniel suggested it while we were washing dishes. Casual, like mentioning the weather. We could renew our vows, he said. Do it right this time. Just us and people who actually matter. The ceremony happened in our backyard with Grace, Ryan, his girlfriend, and baby Delphine. Ryan's girlfriend recorded it while the twins tried to eat the flowers Grace had picked from her garden. Daniel wrote vows about choosing each other every day, especially the hard days. I simply said I loved him and meant it. After everyone left, we put the twins to bed and slow danced in the kitchen to no music at all. A letter arrived from Melissa's treatment facility 9 months after we'd left Buffalo. The doctor explained. She was making progress with therapy and medication. She'd written apology letters as part of her treatment. Would we consider supervised video contact in the future? The letter went into our filing cabinet between the twins' birth certificates and our car insurance. Maybe someday I'd answer it. Today wasn't that day. The twins took their first steps on the same rainy Tuesday while I was folding laundry. One stood up using the coffee table, then the other copied. They wobbled toward each other and collapsed in giggles. Already competing, Daniel joked, and we both froze. Then he laughed. Competition could be good. Like, who can give the best hugs or be the kindest person? We were writing new rules for our family. Some nights I dreamed about Melissa. Not the woman with the knife, but the sister who taught me to ride my bike. The girl who'd split her Halloween candy with me when I dropped mine in a puddle. The person who'd existed before jealousy and mental illness consumed everything good about her. I woke up crying from those dreams, grieving someone who might have only existed in my memories. 1 year in Seattle meant 1 year since the baby shower. I posted a single photo on Instagram of the twins laughing at the park. The caption read, "The best revenge is a life well lived." I turned off comments before anyone could respond. Some stories didn't need audiences anymore. The park near our house had baby swings and a sandbox where the twins could dig for hours. Daniel pushed them while I sat on a bench with coffee, watching our little family that we'd built from chaos. A woman sat beside me and commented on how calm and happy we all looked together. For the first time, I believed her. The twins would learn their stories someday when they were old enough to understand that families can break and heal and break and heal again. They'd know about their aunt and grandparents and why we lived so far from where Mommy and Daddy grew up. But today, they just knew that Daddy made airplane noises when he pushed them high, and Mommy always had goldfish crackers in her purse, and their world was safe and small and full of love. That was enough. That was everything.